Welcome to the Reboot Chronicles, connecting you to the world's top leaders and CEOs rebooting their organizations and themselves with revealing stories to help you prosper in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean DeBias, and as a serial CEO who's led dozens of companies that created thousands of jobs and billions in revenue, my passion is uncovering powerful lessons that can inspire you to reboot your organization, your career, and your life. Listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts or at rebootchronicles.com. I'd like to welcome a remarkable leader and author of 4 books, John Burke, who is the president and CEO of Trek Bicycle. Founded by his father in a red barn in Waterloo, Wisconsin, John has been rebooting the company since he started working there, I'm guessing as a kid. Under John's leadership, Trek has become a global powerhouse, one of the most popular bicycle brands, and Fortune magazine's top companies to work for. Pretty impressive. Still an ESOP company and owned by its employees and founding family, Trek has grown into a $2 billion company with about 5,000 employees who sell through a massive network of distributors and dealers around the globe. John, it's good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me today.
Did you start there as a teenager? What's the deal? I was trying to count how many years. Gosh.
I worked, I used to come out here with my dad every once in a while, and I worked in the warehouse in college. And I picked and I packed in the warehouse. And then after I got out of school, I came home, I got my wisdom teeth pulled. And the next day I was working or 2 days later, I was working at Trek. And I've been here ever since. And that's 40 years at the bike company.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I could do that. As a serial CEO, and that's one of the reasons we loved when there was interest in having you on this show. Is like most of the CEO big dogs we've had on are they've parachuted in for the reboot and fixed the company, and there's some of the largest companies in the world. But that's what I love about you is you've had to reboot Trek. I don't know how many times. We'll get into that in a second. You've been through a lot of offensive and defensive moves, recessions, Lord knows. So what's your latest reboot? What's going on?
Oh man, it's hard to say where to start. I would say the latest reboot is the one that's going on right now. I mean, we're living through it. We went through a crazy period of time, March 2020 with the pandemic. Everyone thought the world was
Everybody wanted a bicycle then. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but there was 3 weeks before that when we all thought the world was going to come to an end, and nobody wanted a bike, and then everybody wanted a bike for 2.5 years, and it was a crazy, crazy ride on the way up. It was the bike boom, and since then we've entered the bike bust, where a lot of people have bikes. There's a lot of inventory in the channel, and that's really forced us to work through our business. So that's the latest reboot.
And what that sounds like a global right sizing thing. You guys are all over the world. Headquartered in Wisconsin is a great place to be from. Great cultural values. I've always watched you from afar. Growing up in Illinois, just kind of over the state line from you. Trek bikes when they came out, it was a very, I don't know if it was a niche product, but it was a really cool product that no one had ever seen before. How did you grow it into this massive global brand? Most people are surprised you're $2 billion company.
Yeah, I think there have been a few good decisions made along the way. There have been some bad ones, but I think one of the first decisions was finding a market that wasn't being addressed, and that was high-end bike market made in the United States. In the mid 70s, there was this big thing about touring. People would get on their bikes and they'd ride long distances, and nobody really had great bikes for that. And there was a guy, Bevel Hogg, who came to see my father, and he says, "There's an opportunity here," and they started Trek. And so I think that was the first real break as to how you became a global brand. I think the second one came through a reboot, and my dad was the money behind Trek, but he didn't manage the business in the first 8-9 years. And then Trek ran into some trouble. It was growing a lot, but there were problems. And my dad came out and he ran the business. And through his experience, he really focused on the customer. And he really focused on the retailer and what it would take for Trek to be successful with retailers. And it made Trek, I called it the home of the happy retailer. I mean, we did whatever it took. And,
Yeah.
I spent my first job, I was a sales rep, and I was located in Colorado, and I had like 12 states. And I drove this little Chevy Cavalier station wagon, 60,000 miles a year around the Rocky Mountains. And it was at a time when Trek was having a lot of problems and there was no greater education. And so I came in and I was here for a big reboot. And, I was able to turn around. My first job inside was customer service, and all the crap I saw out in the field, I was able to change.
Is
And
that when your dad cleaned house the first time?
it was. And he
Yeah, I
cleaned
heard about
house,
that.
and I was sitting there. I was 24 years old, and he's like, "Dude, you're in the game. You're in
Get
charge.
to work.
you're you're in charge of sales."
Well, no better person than someone's been stumbling around the field for a few years in Colorado. But customer journeys, all the money we put into it, they still kind of suck. There's so many companies that they just have a terrible customer journey, whether it's insurance or whatever. Let's not pick on everyone, but how have you improved that bicycle shop owner's customer? It just even for
oh
me, it's like I gotta put the bike in the car. I gotta lug it over there. I'm probably gonna
yeah,
break it getting it out of the car. The repair thing is definitely a journey, but so's the buying experience.
I think if you go back in time, there's two different experiences. One is for the retailer because retailers have choices of brands that they want to stock, and how can we make that buying experience better? And we weren't that sophisticated in the late 80s when we turned it around, but it was making ordering easier, it was processing credits fast, it was answering the phone, returning calls before you go home. It was simple stuff. Today it's much more complicated. If you take a look at Trek's Trek's net promoter score today is 92. It's the
Yeah,
highest net.
that's the other reason we've had you on is not everyone can say that
No,
for a
they can't.
consumer brand.
No,
By
and
the way,
and
did you guys say you answer the phone? That's fascinating.
well, yeah, I'm back to the 1980s, but we still answer the phone. And one of the things
Yeah.
I'll tell you, which I'm really proud of, is we have an owner's manual. And about 15 years ago, they came in to see me and they're going, "We're redoing the owner's manual." And I'm like, "Thank God, it's terrible." And I look
Yeah.
at this thing and it's warning, warning, don't do this. I mean, it's written
Yeah.
for lawyers. And I said, "We got to change this. We got to make it friendly for the customer." And they're like, "Yeah, we just can't do that." And I'm like, "We're going to do that." And I'm like, "Well," I go, "At least give me the first two pages." And so I wrote in there, "Thanks for buying a Trek. Welcome to the Trek family. If you ever have a problem with your bike, see your retailer. If they can't help you, call Trek. Here's the number. And if Trek can't help you, here's my email and I will." And I've been doing that for 15 years. I answered 3 consumer emails this morning. And we do whatever it takes to make the customer happy.
I think that's a big differentiation, and actually putting your home phone number. No one has those anymore. Your cell phone number might have been better. Kidding. I grew up in Chicago, and I watched Schwinn bicycles used to be the biggest brand in the world in my childhood days, and I watched the demise of that company. A great case study. Talk about it a lot at Kellogg, or the Chinification of a lot of bicycles. It's just a lot of cheap junk out there now. And it looks like competitive wise is the question. You've got Giant, Specialized, and you. I think those are the big three. And how do you stay super competitive? You've got a lot of SKUs, a lot of categories that we get into here, but how do you generally stay competitive?
I think, one of the biggest questions for anybody in business is how can you be dramatically different? And, we like to take a look at that entire customer journey, both for a retailer and a consumer, and say, how can we be dramatically different? One of the
Yep.
things, if you take a look at cars, there's a lot of really good $40,000 cars. If I ask a room of 50 people, write down who makes the best $40,000 car, you're going to get 10 different answers. There's a lot of people who make a good $500 bike or a good $3,000 racing bike. We think we make awesome products. And we have a saying here, only awesome products that we love. And that's what we focus on. We set a really high bar, but we also figure out how else can we be dramatically different. And one of the ways we do it's with service and support. We take care of you, period. And every step along that journey, we're trying to improve. We're trying to be different. And that's a big focus here at Trek is everything we do matters. Every single person here at the bike company matters. We are always looking at our business to see how we can improve it.
And what's the hardest part about keeping that going?
Yeah, I think Jim Collins put it really well when he said, good is the enemy of the great. It's like, if you really want to be great, that's a different category than good. And a lot of people are satisfied with good. And it's really getting the team fired up to set, we're going to do better than that. No, that's not good enough. And we push the envelope here. We push the envelope on products and we push the envelope on services.
My cousin is a CEO of an ESOP company just south of you, and he says that is such a big motivator. Employees feeling more like owners. And how does that help your culture?
We have an amazing culture here. I mean, I'm so proud when I walk around this place, and I'm so proud
Yeah.
when I talk to people on the team, and I'm so proud when I talk to customers who have had interactions with Trek. Our culture is amazing. The ESOP helps reinforce that. I mean, it's one of the great decisions my father made back in the 70s. It's like there was an ESOP, and that was a great thing. There's profit sharing. People are directly tied into the success of the company. This is a team game. Everybody matters.
Yeah. And I see that missing in a lot of multi-billion-dollar companies. I mean, it'd be easy for you to say that if you're 100 million, but you're in the multi-billion category. The other thing I've noticed is culture shifts in terms of what they're doing. So we had the CEO, chairman of Steel, the chainsaw company, on recently, and they have always been vertically integrated like you. They make every little component, things that you
Mm-hmm.
really shouldn't have to make in this
Yep.
sourcing economy, but they're still doing it. And it's part of their shtick. And they sell through small little dealers, kind of like you, bicycle shops that can repair, not big box guys that ignore. Anyway, the point is they've got this next generation stuff of battery wireless. So do you. So they've had to shift that culture a little bit, and they have to source batteries and technologies and all these things that really aren't in their wheelhouse. And have you gone through that, and has it changed the way your rocket scientists are planning bikes now?
The game's always changing, and it can be, changing materials from steel to aluminum to carbon fiber. We've gone through those eras. It can be changing from acoustic bikes to electric bikes. It can be digital products that are really becoming a bigger impact on bicycles. It can be on the service side. I mean, the rate of change continues to increase. And if you're not a nimble organization, you're going to have a big problem in a hurry.
So when you used to build things, you'd look through, hey, should we build it ourselves? Should we acquire something? Should we partner? Is it starting to go a little bit more towards the buy and borrow versus build everything yourself?
We build stuff here, we source stuff, we make the best decision for the business and the consumer, what's going to drive
Yeah.
the most amount of value, what's going to be most favorable to the supply chain. I've always said the bike business is the poor man's car business. It's complicated. There's model year changeovers every year. There's service parts of the business. There's the wholesale side. There's retail. There's a lot of different aspects to this, and it's pretty complex. We try and simplify it.
And are you guys? I know you've got a very strong network. Are you doing DTC as well, direct to consumer, where people can just buy from you?
We are. We do. We have an incredible network. We have 5,000 retailers around the world, and then we are
Yeah.
doing. We call it customer choice. So consumers can buy direct at a dealer. Consumers can buy online, pick up in the store. Consumers can buy online and have white glove delivery to their house, and consumers can also buy directly online and get it shipped to their homes. But we have the best dealer network in the world, and we put a lot of time, effort, and training into making sure that channel is really vibrant and really competent.
And how's the turnover? People replace their phones quite often. Their their pads not as often as Apple would like to. Their bicycles, man, I see a lot of old bicycles. How do you? How do you? Oh, sorry, I'm talking about my garage. How do you? Yeah, how's that going? Is it been coming down? Like people want upgrade, upgrade, upgrade. And you mentioned, you probably have an app that ties into your bike now and other things. But yeah, what's the life cycle planning look like? You mentioned cars, so
I, we're not sophisticated enough to be able to completely answer that. People upgrade their bikes. Some people upgrade their bikes every 3 years. Some people upgrade their bikes every 15 years. People have bikes in their garages. I mean, it's a different cycle for different consumers. And, we try and take care of everyone. One business that we've recently opened up, Trek was started in a red barn less than a mile from here. So we turned the
yeah.
red barn into a business we called Red Barn Refresh, where we take back used bikes, we refresh those bikes, and then we sell them again. So we're trying to participate in the circular economy.
I love that, and the fact that you're actually doing it yourself. So how do you play the long game in this? You tend to make decisions, unlike public companies. Maybe that's why you didn't go public. How do you get to your 5, 10 year plan, whatever the heck that is, um, better than other competitors?
I mean, I can only speak for ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of really competent bike companies out there, but we have our flywheel, and our flywheel starts with best team on the field. And then the next part of the flywheel is we make long-term decisions. And one of the reasons why we're able to make long-term decisions is it's a private company. Um,
Yep.
and, the ownership is concentrated in the family, and Trek's part of that family. And we make the best long-term decisions for the bike company. That's something that my father always did. And it's one of those business isms that I've inherited from him, is that we make the best long-term decisions for Trek. So I'm a history guy, and somebody once said that about Eisenhower. Somebody asked Eisenhower how he made decisions as president. He said, it's
Yep.
really pretty easy. He goes, I get the piece of paper, I look at it, and I go, what's in the best long-term interest of the United States? And I make that decision. And I kind of put that to use at Trek. And I go, what's in the best long-term interest of Trek? And that's what we do. And that's how I think we've been able to stay alive. And that's how we've been able to succeed.
Yeah, my dad actually worked for Eisenhower when he was the Supreme Commander of the Allied headquarters. My dad ran logistics for World War II for him, and they taught him so many stories, and almost kind of like a mentor to the country. Quite frankly, seemed like your dad was your mentor. What was your any other big lessons from him that we should be passing on here? Let's skipping you, I guess, and how it
Well,
impacted you.
I actually wrote a book about him called One Last Great Thing, and I think there's 10 lessons in the back.
It's a great,
But I
great
would
title.
say the lessons from my dad would be think long term It's focus on the customer. Who is your customer? And focus on your customer. And I think one of his things was, if you're going to do it right. We have a little different
And
twist on
that's,
that now, but
you know,
he was clear about that. And I think one of the other things, and he was early on this program about having an ESOP and having a profit sharing program. He was into making sure everybody had skin in the game. And if the company did well, he wanted everybody to do well. He couldn't care less about his net worth, didn't care. I went through his
no.
papers after he passed. And one of his goals in like 2002 was spend more money, because he just didn't spend any money.
Yeah,
And he was a simple guy, but he wanted to do it right. He cared.
that's that. That's that generation. You know, that's a great book, and you've written a few others. I think when you wrote your first book about saving America, I think since then the national debt has doubled. So I'm curious, you know, what would you do to um, kind of reboot the government right now, and specifically around making sure America is a stronger, vibrant, capitalistic economy? Because as the economy goes, so does our country. In the Reboot Chronicles opinion. Yeah, what would
Yeah.
you do if you had to go to Washington today on a plane?
Um, I think the first thing I'd do is I would change the campaign finance laws. There is so much money involved in politics today that all of these positions are for sale. If you take a look in the Senate, it's something like 90% of the candidates who raise the most amount of money win. In the House, it's like 75%. You're going to look at a campaign. You saw a campaign in the state of Georgia, Herschel Walker against Warnock, that spent $425 million. The presidential campaign between Bush and Gore spent $325 million. The amount of money that's flying around in this country is obscene. And the people who give these vast sums of money, they want something. We're not making decisions in the best long-term interest of our economy. We're paying off campaign contributors, and it's sad. Um, so the first thing I'd do is I'd clean up our campaign laws. The second thing I'd do is I would really have an adult conversation with the American people about where we stand. We're $35 trillion in debt. Like, if we can't get our financial house in order, um, the economy will crash. If we keep going along the same path, and it's not a Democratic or Republican issue. If you go back and take a look at the past 5 administrations, Democrats and Republicans, it's the same thing. No
Yeah, it
difference.
is.
Same size of deficits. And nobody wants to have the conversation with the American people. And we need to have that conversation. And the only way you fix it is you raise revenue, or you cut spending, or you do both. And you need to have that conversation. And then there are other conversations that need to be had. It's all this whole building a long-term, vibrant economy. There are other things that matter. The healthcare system matters. It's a
Can we
huge
go back
deal.
to can we go back to your leadership point, because you
Yeah.
skimmed over something there? We don't necessarily get the sharpest tools in the shed in these positions. Locally, I went to an event last night. And they're like, "Hey, I won." I'm like, "Oh boy." Locally, it's like, you won. Locally, nationally, how do we get more people? Whatever. I'll just say, like you, kind of helping to run things. Because if we're running it as a business, you and I, we wouldn't hire the people that are there. We would hire the best of the best. Let's just take a city like Chicago. If I was going to go out and find a mayor, I would probably scour the world and hire the best guy to come in and fix it. Like a Ross Perot, somebody to come in and just, like you said, have an honest conversation and fix things. But anyway, I joke around a little bit. But how do we get better talent actually leading the government? Or is it more people like us just stepping up and influencing again without the money and all that other
Yeah.
nonsense?
I wrote a book because I'm a very frustrated American citizen, and I don't like to sit on the sidelines and complain. If I see a
Right.
problem, I want to say something about it. And so I wrote a book called A Bold Plan, and in that I lay out exactly what I would do. Here's 14 of the biggest issues. Here's a nonpartisan way of looking at it. And I really believe that we have a horrible environment and good people don't want to run for office. And we need to
Right.
create an environment where good people want to run for office. And I think the first step to this, really interesting, is we need to have great American citizenship. And our citizenship, in my opinion, has declined at the exact same rate as our leadership. And just think about this. What are the responsibilities of a great American citizen? And I would put two at the top. And those two would be knowledgeable about the issues and votes. 25 to 30% of Americans don't vote in presidential elections, and more than 50% of Americans don't vote in midterms. Okay?
Probably less, actually. Exactly. I went to one last night. I mean, when I voted yesterday, there was no one there.
No one
It's
there?
a midterm.
It's a midterm,
Yeah, but
doesn't
that's
matter.
That's the whole point. That's why you're supposed to come.
Right? It matters. It really freaking matters. And then you get to this thing about, okay, we have these two political parties beating the crap out of each other with just garbage ads. They're all lies. It's one candidate lying about the other one, back and forth, and nobody is talking about the issues. So we dumb down the citizens. If we asked the average American citizen, give me the facts about the debt, just give me three. Tell me about the healthcare system. Just three facts. Tell me about the environment and why we should be concerned or not be concerned about the environment. Give me the facts about gun control. The reason we can't agree on these big issues is nobody's talking about the facts.
Yeah, actually, I'm okay with people. I'm okay with people having their own opinion as long as they have some knowledge and detail about why they have that position. So that's a great point. Versus the sheep society. But the leaders are all out there. You know them. You know, like 30 people that would be great in office. Except our system would chew them up, I guess, is one of the issues.
I went through this. I was thinking to myself, I live in a small village. There's I don't know, 1,000 people in the village. And I was thinking, how many people in this village would be a great United States senator? And I said, minimum 5. So if there's 5 in a small village, there's at least 500 great candidates in Wisconsin. And what do? We keep reelecting the same 2 people term after term after term. And if you really, there is an incredible opportunity to fix this country. And I lay out in the book, here's how you fix Washington. I think Trump ran on, we're going to drain the swamp. Okay, well, what the hell does that mean? You can get a bunch of people all fired up about drain the swamp, drain the swamp. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Are we going to propose a constitutional amendment for term limits? I would. I lay out, here's 4 specific things that I would do to change Washington. And there's a lot of great people in this country who would like to get more involved in their democracy. We can do this. Campaign finance reform, that would drain the swamp.
Well, insert your analogy here, fox hen house, whichever one you want. You've had a lot of personal challenges that people would love to hear some stories about that you've overcome. Just what's your favorite one to share with younger audiences that are that may be working for you someday?
I would probably go back to my father appointed me president of Trek in 1997, and it was brutal. You talk about reboot. That was a reboot. It wasn't a reboot year. It was a reboot 3 years. And
you were rebooting yourself and the company at the same time.
Exactly. And I think there's two things I would really stress here. Is there's the Jim Collins level 5 leader, which is a combination of will and humility. It's like you have to have, in business and life, you have to have an incredible amount of will because you will face problems. I don't care what business you are. I don't care what life you lead. you're going to face big challenges in your life, welcome to the game. That's part of the game that we play. So you got to have an incredible amount of will. And then you have to have an incredible amount of humility. And part of that humility is you don't have all the answers. Nobody does. So I once heard Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and he said this. He said, early in life, the know-it-alls start out here and the learn-it-alls are down here. And as life goes on, it goes like this.
Exactly.
And I'm a firm believer. I once listened to David McCullough give a graduation speech, and it was on reading, which sounds incredibly boring. But he said something that was etched into my mind, which is, readers are leaders. You are what you read.
It's true.
And I devour information.
For those of you that don't read enough, or you can listen to it. A lot of people tune out when you say that. I'm like, hey, you don't have to read it if you had a problem with reading. Just listen to it, especially stories from great leaders like Eisenhower and others.
Yeah. I'm listening to The Bully Pulpit right now by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And it's a story of Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft. It's unbelievable. And you're right there. For the big decisions that are made, you're right there. And that has had a huge impact on me, but I can't overestimate. One of the questions I ask in an interview is, what's your learning engine? And some people are like, and other people are like, well, when I get in the car, I've got a book to listen to. And here's the last 5 books I've listened to. And, I'm a YouTube guy, so I always search YouTube. And last night I watched the Steve Jobs Stanford speech. Unbelievable speech. And you can see people who have a growth mindset and they want to improve. The best way to improve your team is to improve yourself. And for me, I'm a never-ending piece of work. I mean, it's never ending.
Thanks for being honest, John. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Yep.
You've been listening to John Burke, who's the president and CEO of Trek Bicycle. Amazing company. He's also got 4 books. Check out his latest one about his dad. It's awesome. You've been listening to the Reboot Chronicles. This is Dean Tobias. I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.